thank you so much for coming and also for the support that Fiona has received for this campaign. We appreciate it a lot, and it's honestly incredible to see. I would say that over the past few weeks, even like for us, it has been taken by surprise how much support and how much love and interest we've gotten around this campaign. And of course, in particular about the ideas that we have put forward about, of course, kicking the war criminals out of Parliament and just completely exposing the hypocrites, in this government. And no one has, presented an alternative. And this campaign has therefore really struck a chord in Stratford and Bow. And of course, nationally, even internationally, I would say that this has gotten a lot of attention. Now, just a few things. There will be a list going around. So if you're here for the first time, or if you haven't had a chance to leave your details yet, but you would like to get involved, you would like to hear more, or volunteer to help out, then please, leave your details, and we'll be definitely in touch with you as well. And as I mentioned, we have an incredible newspaper called The Communist that will be at this table. So if you'd like to hear more about our ideas and read and see what we have to think about all sorts of different subjects, analysis on the news and theoretical pieces, then definitely please get your copy as well. I would also say that we have been doing extremely well, like with the donations. I think we got about half of the donations that we're after. So if you would like to donate to the campaign, then please do so. That will be greatly appreciated. I think there will be comrades and at the door with a phone that you can just basically tap for donation or scan a QR code, and that will be fantastic as well. So yeah, I think to be honest, that's it. Like Fiona will introduce and do a short speech, and then afterwards there will be a Q&A session where you can ask your questions and or even just make a short comment. And I think we'll take about 3 questions, and then Fiona will come back to answer that, and then do another round of questions. So yeah, I think that's it. And then I'll pass it on to Fiona. Thank you.
Thanks. This is so funny and small and cute, but that's fine. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Sorry, I'm a bit sweaty and out of breath. It's because I've literally run from another meeting that we were just in with Youth Demand, which was very... Sorry?
Do you want me to tie it on you? Yeah.
Oh.
Just so it's...
Yeah.
So you don't have to hold it, sorry.
Okay, give us a moment. Yeah, I was in this meeting with Youth Demand, which is very good. It was a meeting called Tear It Down for Palestine, because they're planning a lot of different activity over what's happening in Palestine, also trying to tap in with this mood that exists in society, which is part of the reason why I'm sure we're all here today as well. And I just want to start by saying, obviously we're here because I'm running in the election, but this election is not just about what kind of government do we want to be in power on the 5th of July. It's about really what kind of world do we want to live in. And I think the people who are joining up to our campaign are most interested in talking about that rather than just specifically how many votes can we get. So I think it's important for us to try and take stock of the world that we live in right now, because it is defined by war. It's defined in part by what's happening in Palestine, which is the most extreme example of what this system will produce, the horrors that this system will produce. But horrors are taking place all over the world, also right here in this constituency and across Britain. The world right now is defined by war and conflict, and I would say inequality on an ever-growing scale. Capitalism is in its deepest ever crisis, and that is reflecting itself politically, economically, in a military sense, and also environmentally as well. And as a result of that crisis, I think it's clear to a lot of us that faith in the system as a whole is also catastrophically low. Politicians are completely hated. Trust in politicians, and this is according to various different polls, is far below what it was in 2009 and 2008. In 2008, there was a huge financial crash, and at the same time, there was lots of scandals coming out about the amount of money that MPs were spending, the MPs' expenses scandals, which caused a lot of disgust. But faith in the system and trust towards politicians is even lower than it was at them. And political parties as a whole are completely hated. And a recent poll showed that faith or trust in political parties was just at 12%. That is a damning indictment on the whole of the system that lies in front of us. But let's not talk about it in the abstract, or political parties in the abstract. Let's be concrete also about this constituency. It is the Labour Party that is thoroughly, thoroughly hated above all. And I would say that they are seen in general, but particularly around here, as traitors, complete traitors to what it is they're supposed to represent. Labour, even being the name, means nothing to them anymore. And I think those of us who've been involved in the campaign here, in the canvassing in Stratford and Bow, already know this. When we go out canvassing, when we approach a door or we approach a shop, the first thing that people ask us when they see leaflets or they get a sense that you'll hear about the election is, are you Labour? And when we say no, they breathe a sigh of relief and they say, okay, you can talk to us now. Because they don't want to talk to anyone from the Labour Party whatsoever. Sometimes we don't even get to tell them our politics or what we stand for. They're so excited to talk to someone who's not the Labour Party that they'll just take our posters and our leaflets immediately. But it's important, obviously, that we do have those conversations. But I think that's really, an important reflection of why there has been so much interest in the campaign so far. And I think we should think about what that means for the government as a whole on the 5th of July. We're going to run the best possible campaign that we can here in Stratford and Bow, and on that basis we can win. But we also know that that isn't everything in terms of what the government will look like on the 5th of July. There will be no honeymoon for a Labour government. That Labour government from day one is going to be hated. They already hate them. People are just putting up with the fact that they're just so sick of the Tories. They're like, okay, well, Starmer can get into number 10. There's already a demonstration on the question of Palestine that has been planned for the 6th of July. The purpose of that demonstration is tell the new government to stop arming Israel, tell the new government exactly what you think about the need for a ceasefire. And I think that protest will be enormous, right? Because people are furious over Palestine, but also because Palestine today has become a lightning rod for all the accumulated anger in society, for all the anti-establishment feeling. As I said, everyone hates the Tories, but they hate the Labour Party as well because they're not offering anything different. So the 6th of July, the first couple of days in government, I don't know if Keir Starmer's hoping for it to be quiet, but it absolutely won't be. And I don't think Palestine is the only issue that we're going to see protests over. There's also going to be huge strikes. I mean, the last couple of years, there have been more strikes in this country than in the last 20, 30 years combined because of the conditions that people have been forced into. Unite, which is the largest union in the country, refused to endorse the Labour Party's manifesto. They're already prepared to take on the government. So that means from day one there's going to be immense anger and people yearning, looking, searching for a way to change their lives and change the choice that they've been given, which isn't a real choice whatsoever. And so I think an explosive situation is going to develop. As I said, obviously Starmer is going to win, but we know that that is just the result of the Tories imploding. It isn't a vote of confidence for Starmer or the Labour Party in any way, shape or form. And then what's going to happen to the Tories? Are they going to, just kind of softly kind of float away like we might hope? Probably not. The truth is the Tories are likely to lurch further to the right? They've had the threat of Nigel Farage, the threat of Reform UK. Their whole campaign is just in this election has been to base themselves on the most vicious, horrific, right-wing, racist, bigoted ideas possible to try and claw back the worst possible voters that they can to take them away from Reform and take them away from Nigel Farage. But it's not going to work in this election. And afterwards, they're just going to base themselves on that again. And we can be sure that they'll spend all of their time whipping up more hatred and bigotry. And all of this is going to add to the convulsion and the convulsions, that are taking place in society right now. A polarization is going to take place. And you're going to have a crisis government that's completely unstable from day one. And that government is going to have problems in Britain, but it's also going to have problems all over the world as well, right? What happens in Britain? Britain isn't just divorced from the rest of the world, even if they want to be. This year, there's another big election taking place in America. Actually, this year, there's loads of elections taking place all over the world. It's like 50% of the world's population are voting this year, and they're all voting in many different ways. But let's talk about America, where Trump could win, right? Trump could win the US election. What is Keir Starmer going to do with Trump? How is that relationship going to work? Trump's policy is utter contempt for everyone. It's just, fuck the rest of the world, America first. That is all I'm interested in, which is the same policy as Biden, essentially. They just try and present it in slightly different ways. And the British ruling class, the British capitalist class, is desperate for deals with America. They want to have a very great trade relationship with America, but Trump's not interested in Britain or what might help Starmer out. All he's interested in is maintaining America's position and maintaining his own position in power as well. And there'll be a lot of pressure on Starmer then to try and, suck up to Trump and do whatever Trump wants, which will mean disastrous consequences on the world stage in places like the Middle East, because British foreign policy and British imperialism today is essentially whatever America wants, because they're desperate to maintain that relationship. And Starmer likes to present himself as a sensible man and of the centre and not ridiculous, but he will be forced by his position to do whatever Trump wants and to shake his hand and be up there too. All of that is going to add to the anger and the hatred that people have towards him. The war in Ukraine will drag on. As I said, the situation in the Middle East is also spiraling out of their control because of the situation, because of Israel's threats in Lebanon now, because of retaliation attacks from Iran. Britain and America, they don't have control over that whole situation, and they're going to be clambering as much as they can to just maintain their profits and try and keep hold of one ally in the region. And who is that? Israel. Israel is the main ally that the West has in the Middle East, and that is why they will take the most horrific conditions in Palestine, the murder, the beheading, the decimation, the displacement of millions of people. They can live with all of that if it means they've got an ally in that region who will protect their interests and protect their profits. That is the logic of their system, and that's why it's the system as a whole that is the problem. The whole world situation is a powder keg, and this new government is going to be bombarded and assaulted from all different sides, and I don't think they're going to get a moment's peace. And as I said, their policies ultimately will put profit above everything else, above human life in Palestine and above human life in Britain as well. All of that is being exposed, and I wanted to start with that because this is the context in which this election is taking place right now. Any election at any time is nothing more than a snapshot of a certain mood at a certain time. That's all it is. But things can and will change very quickly. We are running an amazing campaign here, but no matter what, we'll still be doing the same thing, although it might look slightly differently, on the 5th of July, which is preparing and organising a fight back against a right-wing Labour government. That is, and because we know that the situation can move and it can jolt in different ways at a moment's notice. So, what is our campaign doing about this whole situation we find ourselves in? I would say first and foremost, we're telling the truth. That is the most revolutionary thing that we can do. We're telling the truth that a storm is coming our way because people are angry and that they're going to get angrier, but that we can do something with that anger. We can channel it into a force that can actually change things. As I've said earlier, the truth is, the reason that they accept what Israel is doing is that the deaths of tens of thousands of men, children and women, the injury of hundreds of thousands, the displacement of millions, all of that is acceptable if it facilitates their continued ability to make profit. British planes and British technology has been flying over Gaza and involved whilst Israel has been bombing different camps all over the place. This is what they spend their money on, and what we have to say throughout this campaign is, why do they have money and technology and weapons for all of those atrocities, but no money to fund the NHS, no money to fund healthcare, no money to house us? And they always do this continuously. They've done it and they are doing it over Palestine, but this is always the way of capitalism. They find money for war. They find money to replace Trident, which will cost £200 billion. They're trying to find money, or they will find the money, to increase defence spending as well. But when it comes to what we actually need, they say we've got to tighten our purses and we've got to deal with the fact that the economy is going through hard times right now. the Labour Party's manifesto and the Tories' manifesto, both of them leave the NHS worse off than what it was in 2010. This is what we mean when we say what is happening in Palestine is linked to what is happening here as well. They invest in war rather than what we actually need. And as I say, they've always done this over the last 20 years. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, all over the world. This is what the list is endless. And in all of that time, our lives here have been worsening our living standards. £200 billion that they would spend in order to renew Trident. That is a scandal, and I would say that is extremism. They will say, look, we've had a lot of support for this campaign, which is amazing, but I'll tell the truth, we've had a few haters or a few people who don't like what our campaign is about and what I've been saying. And what they say is that these policies and this program is extreme, it's radical, and it's completely unrealistic. But why should we accept a system that hoards all of this wealth, has loads of it and displays it all throughout the City of London, right over there in Canary Wharf, whilst 50% of children in this constituency live in poverty, whilst pension poverty in this constituency is completely soaring? That is extremism. That is the most extreme possible way for people to live, and why should we accept that? Well, we shouldn't, and we don't have to. Let's look at the cost of living crisis, which is the most acute example that people are experiencing in terms of the crisis of capitalism today. People feel that in their energy costs and in their food costs. Why should we pay higher energy costs when the energy companies in the last 2 years have made £400 billion in profits, right, at the same time that our prices are going up? And I think this applies to all basic services. Food is also exponentially, food today is like 22% more expensive than it was 2 years ago. Everyone knows that. Everyone sees the meal deals going up. And yet, look at the profit. Tesco, last year, Tesco's profits went up by 150%. This is astronomical, and all of this, energy, food, these are basic things that people need in order to live. Why should there be a group of people in society that make profit out of that? That is extremism, and it is not radical to say that that should end. It is not radical, it's actually entirely logical to say that we should take all of that wealth and all of those profits and invest it in healthcare, invest it in housing, and invest it in what we actually need. There are other people out there who might say things that sound similar. I was at Hustings yesterday, actually it was in this room, but there was a Tory on that end and a Labour Party guy on that end, and they were all saying nonsense and they were all saying rubbish. There was a Green candidate as well, who was perhaps, apart from me, the second most radical person in the room. And the Green candidate's proposal was basically to tax the rich. We should tax the rich, and that's how we're going to get money to do things. And okay, that's fine, sure, of course. I also think we should tax the rich. But if you tax the rich, they're still going to be rich at the end of the day, right? It's not really enough. Does anyone actually believe that taxing the rich is going to solve everything in society? What we say is not just tax the rich, but actually seize their wealth entirely. 1% of people in Britain own as much wealth as 70% of people in Britain. That is extremism, and that has to end. What we are fighting for is not that 1% should just own maybe 60% of the wealth or 50% of the wealth. We're saying take all of that wealth away from them and put it in the hands of the people who actually work, who actually produce what we need in society. And so I think it's complete nonsense, and we have to expose that for what it is, and really expose the Labour Party when they say, well, things are going to be tough, and when they look at the junior doctors or the nurses who are striking in the NHS, and they say, what the Labour candidate said in this hustings is we need to have a grown-up conversation with staff in the NHS about conditions, and that we have to have an adult relationship, basically saying that they're being outrageous for asking for a pay increase, which is disgusting, as if we can't see all of the wealth that they actually have and the wealth that exists in society. They tell us to squeeze our pockets whilst they laugh all the way to the bank. The money is there, we can see it, it's sitting in the biggest businesses, it's sitting in the biggest banks, and what we stand for is nationalising all of the biggest energy companies, all of the biggest banks, all of the biggest landlords, nationalise all of them without compensation, and it's on that basis that we can fund the things that we actually need. It's on that basis that we can fund the essential services that we need. We're not asking for luxury yachts or luxury flats. We're asking to live a decent life. And why shouldn't we? Shouldn't we live in a world where everyone is housed and everyone has healthcare and everyone has access to education? And we fight for free education, fully funded, from university all the way to nursery. In this borough, 50% of children live in poverty, right? They're going to schools that are completely underfunded, that don't have enough teachers, that have asbestos in the walls. How can a child learn and develop and live a full life in those conditions? They can't. How many future scientists, artists, engineers, writers, painters are being denied their ability to move their life forward or even give to our society because of the cruel and unnecessary underfunding that exists in their life? That is what we are opposed. There are constant stories in the news about children who are being made sick, who are being made unwell by mold in their houses or just by unsafe air. There's 1,000,001 horrors that exist, not just for children, but for all people under this system. It is not radical and it is not extreme and it is not unrealistic to oppose that and fight for the opposite. There are solutions to the problem that we face. That is what this campaign is about. But the only way for us to actually solve it is to strike the problem at its root, which is the capitalist system. We are interested not in reforms, not with tinkering around the edge, not with any half measures, but going the full way. And I want to end by making this point. I think there is a massive vacuum in society right now. I don't think anyone is taking seriously the extent of the change that is necessary, that a revolution is necessary. If we want to end this system, it will require a revolution. It's not going to take place by small reforms or small campaigns every 5 years. We don't even have time for that. We need to prepare for that. That is what this election campaign is about. The point of this election campaign is not just to be an MP, though if I was an MP, I would do everything I could to expose war criminals, to expose the system, and to organise people outside of Parliament in the most effective way possible. But the point of this election campaign is to try to begin the process of filling this enormous vacuum that exists in society, the vacuum of people who are desperate for revolutionary fundamental change. So we need to be prepared, we need to run as serious a campaign as possible, and we need to go out there with the full message that we are aiming for nothing less than to change the world. We know exactly what we are opposed to, but we are also saying what we are for. It is not enough just to be against the system. You have to be for an alternative. So let's plan an economy, let's plan it on the basis of need and not profit. Let's kick out all the profiteers, all of the war criminals, and all of the imperialists. We have war criminals to kick out, but most importantly and most positively, we have a world to win. Thank you.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Fiona. I think that was an excellent introduction, and I can tell you won't find politics like this from any other candidate. So this is, of course, very, very good. And yeah, this is basically an opportunity now for you to ask your questions, anything that you would like to know, or want Fiona to answer. Of course, any comments are also welcome. So yeah, if anyone would like to come in, please feel free to raise your hand. I can bring you in. No questions.
Or a
Okay.
report from the campaign, if anyone has an anecdote.
Yeah, or reports. Also, like, there have been people around going, like, canvassing, going door knocking. Please feel free to come in and say how that has been. Anything is welcome. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I have a question. I know, Fiona, that, like, Jeremy Corbyn and his, like, leadership of the Labour Party was a part of what radicalised you. Wondering what you think the reason is that, like, feels like the Labour Party has fallen so far. Like, why did they go from, like, what felt like for a lot of people like this hope, like Jeremy Corbyn felt this hope for a new kind of politics? Like, what happened there? Why did that change?
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
You've spoken again about the student movement, and obviously there's been a few strikes in the coming period as well. Obviously we're trying to win on the 4th of July, but what do you think we need to do to prepare for were all these struggles that you're talking about coming after the fall?
Thank you very much. Great, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I heard you say you basically would pledge that you'd only take an average worker's wage. I was wondering why you would do that and not just take your full salary.
Excellent. I mean, that's already 4 questions. Would you like to bring in?
Yeah, take some more.
Yes.
No,
You can take more.
no, it's
If
fine.
anyone has any other questions, we can take more.
Yeah, on this question of why did Corbyn or the Corbyn movement kind of drop away, I think that the main lesson of Corbyn and the kind of rise and fall of Corbyn is that Corbyn didn't go far enough, essentially. Corbyn did popularise ideas of socialism for a whole generation of people, including myself. I joined the Labour Party when I was 18 to vote for Jeremy Corbyn, to support what he was doing. I was, very taken by his policies, his programme, and what he represented. And then I think, like many other people, was essentially left wanting. And then we watched for years as Corbyn was just beaten down by the media and by the right wing of the Labour Party, and he kind of often just apologised and didn't really go the full way in fighting for what he wanted and fighting for socialism. You cannot compromise with the right wing. You cannot compromise with big business. And I think in the Labour Party there were people who were fighting for the right wing and fighting for big business, and the mistake was to just let that happen and think that we could work out a deal with them or appease them. And that was a mistake, and that was wrong. And as a consequence of that, Labour was unable, and Corbyn was unable to, fully take things forward or even get a chance of coming into power. I think even if he had come to power, he would have faced even bigger fightbacks from not just the right wing of the Labour Party, but the whole of the state. I mean, don't get me wrong, the state were involved in attacking Corbyn when he was the leader of the Labour Party as well, but he would have been up against even bigger forces. And if he wasn't able to fight the right wing of the Labour Party when he was in there, then I don't have much confidence that had he gotten into power, that he would have been able to keep that away as well. And one other thing on this, I mean, there was a video, Corbyn, an interview I saw this morning of Corbyn saying that whilst he was the leader of the Labour Party, he was sat down in a meeting, I don't know who it was with exactly, and he said that he was told, will you commit right now that if you become Prime Minister, you would automatically back Israel's military policies in the region? And he was being told, you have to commit to that right now. And so he said, and I explained to them, no, I wouldn't automatically back that at all, which is good and right and the correct answer. But at the time that meeting happened, Corbyn should have come out immediately and said, I've just been told that I need to do this. And all of that would have helped galvanise and mobilise a movement around him. Nearly, the Labour Party, when Corbyn was the leader, became the biggest political party in Europe. It had 500,000 people join. And those people could have been mobilised to fight on a bigger scale. And I think it was a wasted opportunity that they didn't. In terms of how we should prepare for all the struggles taking place after the 5th of July. What's really important, and I think what stands out about this campaign, is that we've got political ideas. We've got a clear idea of why the world is in crisis, and we have an alternative to that system. We want to politically educate and get our ideas out there on as big a scale as possible, and that requires people. That requires people to be organised. What we say is that we need people to be organised in their schools, in their universities, and in their workplace. That is what the Revolutionary Communist Party does. It builds branches all over the country, all over the city, to train people in those ideas to go out there and recruit others and then fight for what we actually need in our local communities, whether it's a school, a workplace, or a university. And so that is going to be necessary regardless of what happens on the 5th of July. In terms of what I want to do in Stratford, I think what I was talking about just now in terms of political education is really key. Look, if I became MP, what I would want to do first and foremost is create a culture of political discussion essentially across the whole constituency, where you have meetings of people where they can come and talk about the problems in their lives, talk about what's happening, and then it's on that basis that we decide how we're going to fight back against this, right? A lot of the problems in people's lives are ultimately connected to the massive underfunding that is taking place. The only way we are going to get that funding is if we fight for it and we campaign for it. So, for example, in the hustings here yesterday, it was an Age UK hustings, so it was mainly older people in the audience, and we were talking about different struggles and different problems that older people face, and that might be access to certain things, whether they struggle with the digitized nature of the NHS and all this. That requires training programs, or there might be more languages and translations that needed to be necessary for different people. That requires people who are trained in those languages, who are trained in how to use that, to go out there and talk to people. That requires funding, but the councils are completely underfunded. So we need to fight for that money, and the only way we're going to do that is not by asking nicely, but it's by building a big campaign. That's the sort of activity that I would want to be involved in. It's by bringing people together and building the movement and the campaigns and the struggle around them. I'm going to say to people, the best way to fight for a wage increase is to organize your workplace and to strike. That is the kind of activity and political work that I'm involved in and that I would want to encourage. But that is going to look very different in many different places. Why did I want to take a worker's wage? Well, it's because I think it's important for MPs, or not just MPs, but any representatives, not to live a far off, distant life than the people that they are supposed to represent. It's completely ludicrous. MPs, does anyone know how much money MPs make? £92,000 a year. Okay, it's insane, and it's completely detached. Not to mention the second jobs, the lobbying, and everything else. It goes far, far, far beyond that. It's ludicrous, and it makes them completely removed from the lives that people actually lead. And it's important for us to actually be in touch with that. It's completely and utterly unnecessary, and it's also it's a principle as well that should apply not just to MPs but to trade unions and any workers' institutions. And that's really, really important. And what I would do is I would donate the difference to the workers' movement and to important causes, which would be something like 50 grand, basically. An average worker's wage in East London is about 30 grand a year. And so the difference would be donated to the movement, and that's how I would, do it. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Fiona. We can take another round of questions. Again, also reports or like just sharing your opinion is more than welcome. So please raise your hand if you'd like to come in. Yeah.
I guess I'll start off with a question. You have said reforms can't really change the system for the better. I think maybe a lot of people are thinking perhaps small change is easier than big change. So why is that?
Any other questions? Or? Yeah.
I'm just reading mainly about, I guess, the current campaign. I guess if Fiona's team has kind of noticed any techniques that voter suppression that's going on by some of the main parties, because obviously with kind of the TV debates, a lot of kind of the non-establishment parties have been frozen out really in terms of that TV exposure. And what kind of techniques has Fiona's team used to overcome that really, and what it may mean for the state of our democracy, the terrible state it's in going forward post-July the 4th. So that's my
Great question, thank you. Yeah, any other questions or comments or anything? Oh yeah?
Yeah, I just thought just to give just a really brief update. I've just been out and about campaigning several times over the past few weeks. And I have to say, I've never witnessed anything quite like this. I'd say there's a really incredible mood. Well, I'd say actually there's two moods. There's one mood of, I'd say a lot of people who haven't heard of Fiona's campaign don't recognise Fiona. And I'd say when you're down the street and you're there, like, talk about politics, a lot of these people are just like, election, forget it, they're not interested. And yeah, who can blame them? When you've got Starmer and Sunak, essentially both people fighting for the same party, the party of their business. So you can see why people are totally disgusted. But then there's this other mood out there, which is just incredible. People are coming up to our store, as soon as we set it up, they see Fiona on the poster, and they're like, oh wow, it's Fiona Lali, she's incredible, yes, give me a poster, give me leaflets. And not just that, people come and they want to take stuff, they want to go back to their friends, back to their communities, and spread the word. And it's such an incredible energy. It's precisely because what Fiona is saying actually strikes a chord. It's the first time for, I don't know how long, that people, like economists is actually putting forward a program that connects with people's lives. Because all the other establishment politicians, they know they can't actually transform things in the interest of ordinary people. They have to do the bidding of the bosses, the bankers, the establishment. And that means massive cuts in the tax against working people. And that's why they routinely lie, cheat, they're corrupt. That's why people hate them so much. In fact, they've never been more hated. But yeah, Fiona's campaign cuts through that. So I'll just appeal, if there's anyone here in the room that hasn't been out there canvassing, joining us on the doors, get involved. It's absolutely amazing. It'll be one of the best days you can do. So yeah, join us.
Yeah, I think many of our volunteers can also, share similar stories. Like I can say I've been to Roman Road as well the other day, and literally almost every shop was like, yeah, give me posters and put it in their windows. They got lots of flyers. Even someone was just saying, like, simply for being pro-Palestine, like, I'm here for it. I want to support you. And literally open their doors, like even offer to host events or meetings in their shops. It's really like such a welcoming, and they're so happy to basically see you. So yeah, if you want to just experience that and have those conversations, it's the most optimistic that I've felt in a long time, and just like being out there and active and talking to people is incredible. So definitely would recommend. And yeah, there is so much left to do in those 2 weeks before the election. So definitely let's get out there and do this. Cool. Are there any other questions? Any other comments? If not. All right, then I think, do you have all of the questions? Yeah, cool. Then yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So in terms of this question about reforms and small change being easier than big change, I suppose first I should say I'm not opposed to reforms that make people's lives easier or better. We are the biggest fighter of reforms, and as I said, if I was elected as an MP, a big part of what I would be doing is fighting for as many reforms as possible in order for people's lives to be better, right? I don't have this idea that actually things getting really, really worse is, in a backwards way, a good thing, because that will push people into revolt. That's not what drives people to move. It's actually the process of struggle, the process of fighting for reform that can give people confidence that there's more that they can win and there's more that they can gain, and that is precisely what I would try to do. But what I am opposed to is the notion that is promoted in society sometimes that, yeah, we just have to keep kind of slodging forward through the mud and hope that maybe next year we'll get, £1 more on the minimum wage or something like this. One, because it's nowhere near enough to catch up with the horrors that people are facing in their lives, but also because it is precisely that idea that maintains the system as it is. There have been different forms of society over the whole of human existence, right? When those societies have changed, it hasn't been through slow, sludging, kind of like you're coming up a mountain. It's been through complete massive transformations. It's been through revolutions. That is what radically changes conditions, which is what is necessary. I mean, I'll give you an example. The other day, or yesterday or the day before, I saw a prominent trade union leader, Mick Lynch, who's quite, kind of became famous, I suppose, a year or two ago for being quite radical and talking about class war and the need to take on the bosses and so on and so forth. But his idea that he put out was that we've just got to keep fighting for reforms, and that the way we will win socialism is through more and more reforms through the Labour Party. Today, that is what he was still saying. I think that's completely wrong. And he said people who are organising outside of Labour Party are wrong to do so. But I think he's wrong to do so, and I think it means that he's a bit out of touch with the desperate situation that people are in, but also the truth and the reality of how all change has taken place in society. It has never been through horrific regimes don't fall apart through small reforms here and there. They only fall apart on the basis of mass struggle and mass action. And the second we lose that as our goal is the second that we accept that this is the only way in which we can live, which we can't do in any way, shape or form. On this question of, what techniques should we use in the election and the TV debates, is a good example. I haven't been asked to go to any TV debates, which is a shame because I would love to go to a TV debate with Starmer and Sunak and all of them and just spend the whole time shouting, "You're a war criminal, you're a liar," and some other important political stuff as well. They are squeezing us out. The BBC and these people, they're never going to let us on, right? So one, we've got our own press on our own paper, but also we've got people. I think this campaign probably has more people involved in it than any other campaign that is taking place. And we're going and we're door knocking and we're having these positive conversations. And that is something that very few other people do. When the Labour Party goes out canvassing, all they're interested in is finding out where do pre-existing Labour voters live so that they can go to them on polling day and remind them to go out and vote. They're not trying to convince anyone because they know they can't. All they're trying to do is just hang on to the base that they already have because they've got no ideas. But for us, we have all of the ideas and we're also not afraid to say them on any platform that we can. I mean, I'll give you another example. Part of the reason why we're even in this position is because I did this interview with Suella Braverman, and I did it on GB News. GB News is a right-wing, horrific platform, right, channel. But there's a lot of people who wouldn't have gone on that channel precisely because it is right-wing and on a kind of principle basis would have said, I'm never going to go on there. I think there are certain times when that might be the case. GB News have asked me to go back a lot ever since then, and I haven't gone back because it's not been necessary, it's not been useful, but it's not a principled thing. Like, our ideas are strong and they're powerful, and we cannot be afraid, and we have to take any platform that we can, within reason, to put them out there. BBC aren't going to lay it out on a platform for us, so we've got to make the noise ourselves, which I think we've been successful at doing so far. And I think this is linked to the other question of, what has been the biggest threat to the campaign? I think the biggest threat to our campaign is just not enough people knowing about us yet, precisely because we don't get access to these platforms. We don't have the traditional machine that the mainstream political parties do when they go out canvassing, which is they have on a spreadsheet already where they know all their Labour Party voters already are. We don't have anything like that, right? All we have, which is a good thing, is hundreds of people who want to change the world, who want to get involved in something and want to hear the ideas, and so we can go out there and talk to people. For us, it's not just about picking up votes, it's about having these conversations and inviting people to be a part of this process and be a part of an organisation. The main thing and the only thing I'm worried about is that, we can't reach everyone. And we have to accept that to a certain degree. There's 70,000 people in the constituency. I'm not sure we will speak to every single one of them individually, but we can speak to as many as possible. We can get our leaflets, our flyers and our posters out there. And I'm very confident that once we start the conversation, we can convince them, and it goes extremely positively, which is very different from how any other mainstream political party or candidate is approaching it. We're not politicians, right? And that is the main strength of our campaign. We're not politicians, we're revolutionaries.
If you have any other questions, anything you want to just say, you can of course come to us, come to Fiona and ask her these questions. I know after this we're just going to go probably to the Wetherspoons right here for a drink, so you can of course come and join us for that as well. Again, please, if you want to make any donations or anything like that, please again come to comrades here around the room, and I'm sure we can find a way for you to basically give a donation as well. And yeah, again, just put the call out there. Whatever you can do to support us, if you can volunteer, even if you can just bring a stack of flyers with you and just put it, to your neighbors or to your family and friends to spread the word, that would be of course very, very appreciated. But more than that, just get involved with us, get involved with the party, and we can of course speak about that further now as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming, and yeah, I think that's been a great meeting. I thank you for your questions and contributions as well.